Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to our Hunter series. Right now, game number 2, playing against the Shaman. Oop, let me get that sound there. So, let's see what we're gonna get here. Alright, cool. This is good for learning purposes. Last time we had a Mulligan without coin. Now we have a Mulligan with coin, which heavily influences the Mulligan. Right now you have a Web Spinner and an Ogre Brute. Now, if this is without coin, keeping that Ogre Brute is fairly risky because you really need to hit your turn 2. However, with a coin, keeping this Ogre Brute is actually very good because you have a turn 1 play with Web Spinner and then you can coin your Ogre Brute into another 3-drop if need be. So if you ditch the Power Shot and the Arcane Shot here, there's actually a fairly good chance that you are going to get, in my opinion, one of the strongest curves in the game. A 1-drop into a 3-drop, into a 3-drop, into a 4-drop. I feel like that's fairly strong. With the insurance that your 3-drops are top tier, of course. If you're going 1-drop into MC Tech, into Silverhand Regent, that is not so good for your curve. But if it's a Web Spinner into an Ogre Brute, into an Animal Companion, that's pretty good. So we'll see what our opponent plays and we'll react to that because we did just pick up the Glaive as well. And the Glaive is amazing for early game. It adds 2 damage on your turn 2 and then potentially another 2 damage on your turn 3. So it is just very good for tempo in the early game. It also just buffs your minion. So overall, nothing but praise for the Glaive Zuka. It's an extremely good card. And once again, our opponent has the hero power on turn 2. So you see that this is a recurring theme. You have people that are just drafting slightly too greedy and they just have less chance to hit their 2-drop. So when I say that I really want to have 6 minions to play on turn 2, that is for exactly this reason, guys. You do not want to be in that position where you have the hero power because this game you will see that the snowball that we have is just insane. And this all comes back from our opponent having to hero power on turn 2. So here we are. For me, this is Glaive Zuka, phase to kill the 1-1 and then 2 phase damage. It deals 2 phase damage. It develops 4 power, which is really useful. That means we can sacrifice our Web Spinner and our Glaive Zuka into our opponent's turn 3, say an Ogre Brute or a Spider Tank. So you always want to think ahead like, okay, how am I going to deal with my opponent's next turn? Now, trading the Web Spinner in and coining out an Ogre Brute is not terrible there. It's not bad. I feel like this just gives you the guarantee that you are going to kill your opponent's turn 3. So it looks like our opponent just top decked an Acidic Swamp Ooze. That's pretty annoying. And I thought the Earthshock was coming, but it was actually a Lightning Bolt. So I was like, that's okay. That means he can't play a turn 4 on turn 4. It's pretty bad for him, honestly. Alright, so what makes sense here? 3 mana. I mean, you could say, man, this is a really good board for Illuminator. A 2-4 does really well against a 3-2. What I'm slightly afraid of is any type of health buffing, say a Shattered Sun Cleric would destroy the Illuminator, right? So I'm just a little bit afraid of that. I'd rather play the Ogre Brute. The Ogre Brute is just slightly more insurance against Shattered Sun Cleric. It's a 4-4, so should the Shattered Sun Cleric come down, then you still only have a 4-3 versus a 4-4, meaning that it will still trade. And our opponent doesn't get that free kill, because as you saw last turn, he overloaded himself, so you have to think about a 3-drop coming down here rather than a 4-drop. So we'll see what our opponent opts to do. Seems like quite a decision here. And he opts to play the Mana Tide Totem. He made a last minute change there. Okay, I do not agree with that play if he had another 3-drop to play. Let's go into the mindset of our opponent, because that's something I feel is critical when you are playing this game. You need to try to understand how your opponent is thinking. You need to see his moves and see what is his reasoning behind his moves. And if you get his reasoning, you can also think ahead and be like, okay, what would he try to do next turn with this? Now, because he played this Mana Tide Totem here, I feel that he basically says, okay, this Ogre only has 50-50% chance to hit my Mana Tide Totem, so maybe I'm going to get 2 cards out of that. With that reasoning, I can automatically detect that my opponent is more of a value-oriented player than a tempo-oriented player. Now, you might say, Shady, that's not bad. I mean, he's getting a card out of it. And next turn, there's 50% chance that he gets another card of it. That's great. He'll just have card advantage. What I have to reply on that is that, okay, yeah, you have card advantage, but you will not have the mana to spend it. I mean, it's not because you get a lot of cards that next turn he suddenly has 10 mana. No, he has 5 mana. So whether you have 5 or 10 cards in your hand, in essence, doesn't change that much. Yes, you get the luxury of choosing which card you want to play, but I mean, tempo-wise, not much is going to change whether you have 5 or 10 cards in your hand. Now, obviously, this is an extreme example, and yes, I do acknowledge that. If you have 10 cards in your hand, you're in a better shape than if you have 5 cards in your hand. But just to make the example that early game, the presence on the board and the stats that you put on the board are far, far more important than the cards you have in your hand, because the game is played on the board, not out of the hand. You know, like there's no option to use a card in your opponent's turn out of your hand. Everything has to be on the board. So your board state is super important. Now, he just used 3 mana to develop 0 damage and 3 health, meaning our Ogre could free kill that, and then he has basically nothing on the table. Well, I mean, from turn 3. And that way he can fall behind on the board. So he does get his card. Alright, so what our reasoning here is that we are going to try to kill the Acidic Swamp Ooze. Now you might think, Shady, why the Swamp Ooze? Why not the Mana Tine Totem? Because I don't care about the Mana Tine Totem, honestly. Like, I'm a tempo-oriented player. That card in his hand is not going to save him from the tempo loss from playing this Mana Tine Totem this early. So if we are able to kill the Ooze, I would like to develop, say, the Fairy Dragon and the Illuminator. So, looks like our Ogre is going to go for the value play. Ogre's like, stupid Shady, gonna kill this thing. Like, that Ooze hurts, man. I don't want to hit the Ooze. I want to hit the fucking totem. That's nice and soft. So, he hits it. Our opponent wasn't too happy about it. He's like, the elephants will destroy you. Them elephants. So good. Alright, so because of that, I feel like we just go with the same routine here. We do Illuminator and put the Fairy Dragon out. Oops, nearly put the Flame Juggler out. Flame Juggler here wouldn't have done much. 1 health on this or 2 health is the same. Okay, and you can see that at the end of turn 4, because I always like to compare boards, right? So our opponent had his turn 4 last turn. He's now on turn 5. You can see it here, 5 mana. We've just ended our turn, 4 mana here. At the end of that, we both have a 3-2, but we just have +1/4/4, +1/2/4. So we have 6 damage and 8 health extra on the table than our opponent. That is a massive lead this early in the game. This should almost never happen. This is crazy, the stats difference. And this comes from him missing his 2-drop, playing a 2-drop on turn 3, playing an Overload card on turn 3, and then playing a Mana Tide Totem on turn 4. So you can see that those steps, whereas he might have thought like, man, those are reasonable moves. In my mind, it's like, wow, dude, you've just lost the game. And in my mind, this is like, okay, this game is over. You are so far behind on the table. This should almost never happen, right? So I want you to understand how bad of a situation he is in now. Because sometimes you go like, it's not that bad. You know, I still have a lot of cards in my hands, but cards in the hand usually do not matter. Alright, so he has a fast play here. He's going to charge out and kill our Fairy Dragon. Overall, that doesn't quite do so much. Once again, he has the hero power, so instead of developing for, you know, say a Pit Fighter of 5/6, he develops 3 damage, 2 health. Now, that's not super fair to say because this had Charge and Divine Shield, so it did just kill a Fairy Dragon for free. So this is not just worth 2 damage into 1 health, but just to say that a Pit Fighter would have been a more terrifying board. Now, why wasn't I too sad about that Charge guy is that the Fairy Dragon was the only thing that the Ooze could have killed. Now, because the Argent Horse Rider killed the Fairy Dragon, this Ooze just gonna die for free to our 2 and 4. Right, so excuse me, it's really not that bad. Okay, here there is a slight misplay. We are going to Unleash the Hounds here because it is a decent Unleash board. Our opponent has 3 minions and a total of 4 health, so that's pretty decent for Unleash the Hounds. Also, we are winning fairly hard. That this scenario should not really pose itself very often, that our opponent gets to have 3 minions on the board. It is only because he used the charge minion here and summon the totem that he is up in minions on the board. It's no problem, we still get to use 5 mana to get back onto the board, but this Unleash the Hounds will probably just not do too much later on in the game. So that's our reasoning for using the Unleash the Hounds this turn, rather than, say, do Flame Juggler, Cobra, or Flame Juggler, Animal Companion. So Unleash the Hounds comes out, and then we should play the Flame Juggler straight away, so that we have a 75% chance to hit one of his minions. If we hit any one of his minions, that's really nicey. That means that we can use... Oh, sorry. Okay, so let's say that we play the Flame Juggler right now. If it hits the Acidic Swamp Ooze, it is no problem. We will use the 1-1 into the Ooze. We will use the 2-4 into the 1-1. We will use a 1-1 into the 2-1, meaning we are left with a Dog, an Ogre, and a 2 and 3. Pretty good board. He has nothing on the table. If the Juggle hits one of the 1 health guys, that's no problem. Then the Illuminator will take down the Ooze, and we are still in a very, very good position. Because whether we have a 2-1 or a 2-3, it's really not that huge. It's a little bit annoying for a Lightning Storm later on. But Epiphany was like, okay, so this is happening. We killed a 2-1. We will explain Epiphany's train of thought, which was also a valid train of thought. He wanted to clear the 1-1s and then Flame Juggle to have a 50% chance to hit the Ooze to not damage the Illuminator. But as you see, that was a slightly greedier approach. So I said, like, no, we have to Flame Juggler first, because we want to maximize the chance of not hitting his face. Because hitting his face with the free damage isn't good. You want your free damage to land on minions, and you want your minions to go face. So unfortunately we lose the roll now, but it's really no problem. We are still super dominating. Our Illuminator kills a 3-2, our 1-1 kills a 1-1, and we just go face. So there is really no harm done. But just, you know, like, slight inefficiency. We could have had 1 extra Dog on the table now, if that Flame Juggler had hit a 1-1. But yeah, no problem. So once again, a slow turn for our opponent. I feel like he's just playing a way too value-oriented deck. I mean, he has an Acolyte of Pain in his deck and a Mana Tide Totem, which for me are fairly similar cards. They cost 3 mana, and they represent near to no stats on the table because they draw you cards. Now, do I hate Mana Tide Totem? Do I hate Acolyte of Pain? No, not at all, but I do not consider them curve cards. These are not cards that you play on curve. You do not play Acolyte of Pain on turn 3, just as you do not play your Mana Tide on turn 3. You play your Spider Tank, your Ogre Brute on turn 3 for your stats, and then later on in the game, when you start to run out of steam, that's when you play your draw cards. You know, like Arcane Intellect, you never want to play that on turn 3. You'd rather play that on turn 7, turn 8, turn 9 maybe even. My philosophy is, don't draw cards until you actually need cards, because the mana that you just spent into drawing cards could have been spent developing your board. And if you develop your board, you're going to get initiative. If you have initiative, you are going to get favorable traits. If you get favorable traits, you are automatically getting card advantage, and you are automatically getting more board control. So, like I said, for me, the game is played on the board, and these kind of value cards this early in the game are not so good. There we go. I think everything starts here with Animal Companion, just because Leok changes your traits a little bit. Right now you would have to think of the Ogre Brute hitting the 1-3. But yeah, the Leok would make things different. If you get a Huffer, your Huffer could kill the 1-3 for free. That is also no problem. And then the Brute can kill here. So we do get the Leok. That's nice. Then the 3-3 can kill the 1-3. The Ogre can kill the tank. And we can develop the Cobra. The Cobra is pretty good in case our opponent plays a Sunwalker. If our opponent does play a Fire Elemental, which is a valid concern, he can shoot down your Cobra, that is correct. But then he can't shoot the Ogre that is now a 5-1. Whereas, you know, a 5-1 matches up quite nicely with a Fire Elemental. As you guys know, it is a 6-5. So that Cobra is there just kind of as insurance versus big minions, even Fire Elemental. So our opponent has enough of it. It's, you know, the end of our turn 6 and our opponent is forced to concede. You see that at the end of turn 6, this is our board. At the end of his turn 6, like, his board is gone, right? So he's going into turn 7 with an empty board versus this onslaught, right? So just an extreme example to show how important it is to hit your curve early, to respect the rules of the game, you know, the unwritten rules. Do not play your card draw spells early in the game. Develop your board for maximum stats, maximum tempo, then do the card draw stuff later when you are running out of steam. Okay, guys, I think I've made my point. It's just, you know, one of those points that I really want to hammer on because I see lots of people losing games that they do not have to lose just because they just haven't thought about that concept enough. Just first the tempo, then the card draw. All right, guys. Clean game, clean win, 2-0. I enjoyed this a lot, and yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow for game number 3.